Hi, Room 5. This is Episode 9, Wonderland. Chapter, Rose. Rose and Mavis sat in the log on the lot across the street. The morning dew still clung to the Queen Anne's lace at the edge of the woods. It was early, but already the midsummer sun beat down, making the air thick with heat. Mavis was determined to catch Henry and take him to Mr. Duffy today. She was showing Rose how good she was at tying a slip knot in a piece of rope she had found in the garage. She explained how they could use it as a leash, and everything was going to be easy. Rose was glad that her mother was getting her hair done and then meeting some ladies for lunch. If she saw Rose coming out of the woods with a dog, she would have a hissy fit. "Let's go and get some chicken or something from your kitchen," Mavis said. "What for?" "For Henry, so we can coax him out with wherever he is hiding." "Oh." Rose knew Mavis wanted her to be excited, and she was trying. She really was. She reached into her pocket and curled her fingers around Grace's silver dollar. Grace would have been so proud of her, running into the woods after Mavis like she had. And hadn't Mavis been surprised? Rose could still see the grin on her face. Rose took a deep breath and said, "Okay, let's go." And off she went, up the side of the street with Mavis hollering, "Hey, wait for me!" When they got to the back door, Mavis said, "Hopefully Mama's not in the kitchen, but if she is, let me handle it, okay?" Rose gladly said, "Okay." Mavis opened the kitchen door a crack and peeped in. "She's not here," she whispered. "Come on." The two of them tiptoed across the kitchen floor to the refrigerator. Mavis began to root around inside. "Roast beef," she said, "and look at these." She showed Rose a plate of tiny quiches like the ones Mrs. Tully often served with company when company came in the afternoon. Before Rose had a chance to tell Mavis she didn't think they should take those, Mavis had already dropped 4 of them into the plastic bag with the slices of roast beef. "What's this?" Mavis pointed to something beside the plate of quiches. Rose wrinkled her nose. "Ugh, liver pate," she said. "It's nasty." "Perfect," Mavis said, and dropped it into the plastic bag. "Mavis!" Rose and Mavis jumped. Mavis's mother stood in the doorway to the dining room with her hands on her hips. And then Mavis did her most amazing thing. Before she turned around to face her mother, she stuffed that plastic bag into the waist of her shorts and pulled her t-shirt down over it. "Rose was hungry," Mavis said. "Right, Rose?" She poked Rose with her elbow. Rose nodded, her face burning. Why was she so bad at lying? She'd give anything to be as good a liar as Mavis was. Miss Jetta narrowed her eyes and marched over to the refrigerator. "Then you all get some string cheese or something and get out of here," she said. "I've got sheets to change upstairs." Rose knew how much it annoyed Miss Jetta to have to change the sheets so often. She had heard her grumbling under her breath that the Queen of England probably didn't have her sheets changed that often. So Rose knew that now was not a good time to be stealing food from the refrigerator. But of course, Mavis didn't care how annoyed her mother was. She was bound and determined to carry out the plan to catch Henry today, no matter what. "What's this?" Mavis held up a small plate of tomato aspic left over from last night's supper. Rose wanted to tell her that Henry probably wouldn't like tomato aspic, but Mavis's mother said, "Fine, now take it and go." Then before Rose could tell Mavis that they at least needed forks for tomato aspic, Mavis was hurrying out the back door calling, "Come on, Rose!" behind her. Next chapter, Mavis. Mavis explained her perfect plan to Rose. They would go on back into the woods behind Amanda's house. They'll scatter the food around to lure Henry out of hiding. Then they'll use the rope for a leash and take Henry out to the gatehouse. Mr. Duffy would be so surprised. He'd fall in love with Henry in no time flat. Rose nodded. Mavis put one of her tiny quiches beside a pine tree. She put a slice of roast beef on a moss-covered log, and she put some liver pate by a clump of ferns. "We should at least save the rest in case we need more," she said. She motioned for Rose to come sit beside her in the damp leaves along the path. And they waited. And waited. And waited. Just when Mavis was going to suggest that they go to another spot, A dog's long, thin, white nose appeared from behind a shrub. The nose was sniffing. Next, the dog's brown and white head appeared. Henry's head. It looked at Rose and Mavis. His nose kept sniffing. He hurried to the moss-covered log and gobbled up the roast beef, then the liver pate by the ferns, then the quiches beside the pine tree. Then he walked right over to Rose and Mavis and sat down. "Hey, Henry," Mavis said softly. She ran her hand gently over the top of his head. "Look what I have." She opened the plastic bag in her lap and showed Henry the food inside. Then she took out another one of those quiches and held it out in her palm of her hand. Henry snatched it off and swallowed it in one big gulp. Then Mavis made her move. She dropped the rope with the perfect slip knot over his head. Henry flinched and then pulled and caused the rope to tighten. At first he looked so scared that Mavis felt bad. She quickly began to comfort him, telling him what a good boy he was and rubbing his side. Then she gave him a piece of roast beef and was glad to see that he looked calmer. He stopped pulling on the rope and sat between Rose and Mavis and ate the rest of the roast beef, and then even the tomato aspic right out of the plastic bag. After the food was gone, he lay down, put his head on his paws, and let a doggy sigh. "Oh, he's just so cute," Rose said. "I know," Mavis grinned at Rose. "We did it." Then they did their special handshake, slapping, snapping, and fist pumping. "Come on," Mavis said. "Let's take him to Mr. Duffy."